We have to talk about this, guys. So if you've been paying attention, you'll know that just a few days ago, we had an absolutely massive leak from the Paramount Plus merch line, actually, and it showed us our first ever look at all of the characters in the new Avatar Aang movie, including the updated appearances of Aang himself, Katara, Zuko, Toph, Sokka, and someone very, very interesting, the villain of the movie. And that's what today's video is going to be about. Today, we're going to go into everything we know about this villain, including some new stuff that's never been heard before, and I'm going to tell you what this villain might be. In fact, the origins of this villain are probably going to shock you because he's kind of familiar but also kind of not. So hit that subscribe button and let's get right into everything we know about this villain. So right off the bat, let's get into something that you probably even haven't heard yet, and that is the name of the villain. So his name is confirmed to be Targa by multiple sources, including a licensed Funko Pop website, which you can see on screen now. This is officially licensed from Avatar Studios, so this Funko Pop is legit, this listing is legit, therefore we now know his name is Targa. Now after that, we know for sure that he is an airbender. We know this from both leaks and just if you look at him in the poster, in the group photo that we got from the merch leaks, you can see that he has arrows just like Aang on his body. He's got the traditional arm arrows, the leg arrows, and of course the head arrow, although that one's interesting. The head arrow is pretty different, and it's closer actually to the ancient airbender arrows that we saw in the time of Avatar 1, but we'll get into that later. Let's get into what his name actually means. So what does the name Targa actually mean? Well, in Punjabi, it's a charm or an amulet that can be worn around the neck. And I don't know about you guys, but that really reminded me of the little charm or little airbender symbol that Aang wears around his neck, both in the final episodes of the show, The Last Airbender, but also in this new art for the Aang movie. You can see around his neck in the art for the Aang movie that we've just got released and leaked, you can see that he's still wearing that exact same charm, or we'll call it a charm for now, but you can still see he's wearing that exact thing. And if the name Targa actually does mean a charm like that or an amulet or a necklace, then that means he's going to be a foil, and we know he's the villain, so that could be a direct mirror to what Aang is. Aang is the hero, he's the protagonist, he's the amulet, he's wearing the amulet of power, of peace, the thing that ended the 100-year war. And Targa, he's named after that, so is he the mirror, is he the villain? But let's move on to the other meaning, which is even more interesting, and that comes from Tagalog. And this one may actually even be a more direct analog to the name, because in Tagalog it's spelled exactly the same way, and it actually means the one who comes from. It's a prefix, usually used that before something else. So this means we really need to know the last name of the character. Please, if anyone has any leaks on what the last name is, please release them, because if we find out his last name, I think combined with the first name, Targa, I think that'll tell us exactly where he's from, and I think that'll tell us quite a lot about who he is. Now, let's get into what he is. He's an airbender. We know this from the tattoos, from the arrows, so how can that work? Because obviously Aang was the last airbender during the Last Airbender series, so how can this man be an airbender who's alive, and he looks older than Aang, yet he's still alive during this movie? How does that work? Well, let me tell you. So there's actually three major theories and rumors actually that are backed up by rumors that have taken over the fandom. So let's get into all three. The first one, and this one's the craziest. Some have said that he actually comes from the future and that somehow he has time traveled via the spirit world to come back to the time of Aang just a bit after the series. Obviously, that's when the movie's set. Now, the only reason that this one has gotten so popular is because Aang was supposed to be the last airbender during his time. It actually doesn't really make thematic sense that there would be any other airbenders alive. Of course, they could have survived easily and slipped through the cracks of the Fire Nation invasion, but thematically, it does kind of lessen the impact of Aang saving the world as the last airbender, the last of his tribe, the last of his species. It really does lessen the impact if there were more alive. However, that brings us to the second theory. In the comics, we do actually know that there are people like Aang who did survive, although they really stayed hidden and didn't make themselves known to the Fire Nation. And we know this through the comics because there's actually one where Admiral Zhao actually tries to lure those who may have survived the attack of the Fire Nation into his clutches by setting up traps of ancient airbender relics in caves and stuff like that in order to lure them there so he could set the trap or pop the trap and take them into his custody and then execute them. And because that comic is canon, fully approved by Mike and Brian back in the day, before Avatar Studios even existed, that tells us that in their vision for what happened during the war, there were some that actually did escape. There were some airbenders who survived the Air Nomad massacre. So that tells us already that this man, Targa, could actually be a survivor from the Air Nomad massacre. And then we have the third major theory, and this one comes from the distinctive airbender tattoos, which aren't exactly the same as Aang's modern ones, but also aren't exactly the same as the first airbender community tattoos that we see in the time of Wan in the beginnings episodes of The Legend of Korra. And this theory that he's actually an ancient airbender that has come forward in time, not really forward, but he may have been frozen or something, this one is backed up actually by the official synopsis about the series released by Paramount, which says that Aang discovers an ancient power that could save his culture from from extinction. Now, instead of being an artifact or a relic, could that power actually be a human, a man, an old airbender? Could it be Mr. Targa himself? Either way, we know that Aang will be dealing with stuff from an ancient time if he's going to be finding this relic, so this really tells me that he could be from that same ancient time. Even if it is an artifact that Aang is looking for in the movie, Aang may come across this man, he might unfreeze some ice and take this guy out of an iceberg just like Aang. And that would really back up the theory that he's the mirror to Aang, the necklace, the amulet, the thing that I was talking about before. If Aang finds this guy in an iceberg, he's probably going to see so much in him. He's going to see him as a direct counterpart. His story would be exactly the same as Aang's, minus of course being the Avatar. But then things will slowly change as we find out that he's the villain, and Aang has to make a tough decision to turn on the only other one of his species. And that is going to be the most difficult decision that Aang has ever had to make, even more difficult than having to kill the Fire Lord. And of course he didn't do that. If Aang has to kill this man, the only one left, apart from himself, that can pass on the air nomad culture, genes, and keep the tribe alive, that's going to weigh on Aang so much. So I think that would be a really interesting conflict of the series, and that is my best guess for what the series is going to try and do. Sorry, what the movie is going to try and do. Now, I will go into the final. Absolutely, this one is even crazier than the first one. I should have mentioned this first. There's one other theory that he is from a completely different realm, maybe even part of a different dimension, maybe a part of the spirit world that has never been discovered until now. And that makes sense because Aang is obviously the bridge between the spirit world and the physical realm. So if there is anything left to be found in the spirit world, Aang can be the one to do it. And if he's actually part of an old spirit realm, the old spirit realm, then that would make sense why his arrows are very slightly altered from the old ones we see in the one time and the ones we see from Aang. And you may actually think this is absolutely insane, but there is a little speck of evidence to back this one up. Let me get into it. So in 2024, Paramount and Avatar Studios actually changed the copyright listing for the movie just from the name The Legend of Aang to Lost Realm. Now, Lost Realm, how would that relate to this movie if it's just going to be Team Avatar in the time after the original series? Well, that means there has to be something to do with the spirit world. There has to be some connection. So if they're going to be visiting a Lost Realm, maybe in the spirit world, what's to say that they don't find someone there that Aang wants to bring back to help him reconstruct the Air Nomad Nation? So with all of that out of the way, what does he actually look like in practice, in animation? Well, we know from sources that, and these are actual confirmed sources, that he's an extremely muscular airbender. Of course, we saw that in the latest photo release, and that he's going to be voiced by Dave Bautista. And this makes total sense because what they're doing in animation these days is they're taking people, well, they're designing the 3D model, or in this case, the 2D model, to look like the voice actor, so in case they ever have to come into live action, then there's an easy transition. And that's why this model, this 2D model that they've used in these photos, it does look exactly like Dave Bautista. So we can pretty much confirm the rumors that Dave Bautista is voicing Targa. And the final thing we have to talk about is, does this connect to Avatar the Seven Havens? Because there has been an actual rumor going around that this does connect to the Seven Havens, and that this Dave Bautista villain Targa is actually, he's put back in ice at the end of the series, and then Korra discovers him later, and whatever Korra does to release him or take him out or destroy him, that is actually what leads to the destruction of the world in the Seven Havens, leading into, of course, the Earth Avatar, the new Earth Avatar. So is there any credibility to that? I can't say so right now. This is only fan speculation and rumor going around the forums, but you tell me, what do you think? I want to know what you think about this new villain in the Avatar series. Are you happy to see an airbender as a villain? We already got that with Zahir. Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching. Say thank Mr. Zuko in the comments if you made it this far, and I'll see you in the next one.